The week's end top stories at NBR. My food bag turns to a food industry marketing veteran. The Labour Inspectorate finds members of Gloria Vale can't be considered employees. SEADRAGON believes it's on track to break even for at least some months of 2022. And there's more coming right up. Kia ora and welcome to NBR This Week. We start with a wrap of the end of the week's top business stories from the authority in New Zealand business news since 1970, nbr.co.nz. Then we'll take a look back at the top NBR Today stories for the past week. I'm Paul Brennan. Thanks so much for joining us. My food bag has turned to a food industry marketing veteran to replace its former marketing chief who resigned in May. The company said today it had appointed Joanne Mitchell its chief customer officer, leading both its marketing and customer love teams. Mitchell replaces former Chief Marketing and Customer Officer Louise Cunningham. She has more than 25 years' experience in marketing in both New Zealand and the United Kingdom, including senior roles at Kraft Foods, Charlie's Drinks, McDonald's, and most recently, DB Heineken. Vector's lawyers are arguing for its criminal case against a company and two of its employees to be severed into two trials, with the company still considered its main target, according to a hearing in the High Court at Auckland today. Vector is taking the action over what NBR understands are allegations the company in question and its employees fraudulently breached contract terms involving the recovery of subcontracting costs. Court suppression orders mean the trio's names remain secret, and their trial in the High Court at Auckland has been set down for February 2022. In a pre-trial hearing on Friday morning, Justice Feroz Jargos heard Vector's counsel David Jones QC's application to SEVER, in which he noted Vector has always maintained that the company itself was the main beneficiary of the alleged behaviour. The Labour Inspectorate has found that members of the Gloria Vale Christian community can't be considered employees under New Zealand legislation, the second time such a finding has been made. The outcome means the Inspectorate, which comes under the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment, has no jurisdiction over the workers in the isolated community on the west coast of the South Island and won't undertake further investigation or enforcement action at this point. The latest Gloria Vale investigation followed accusations by former members that the community was exploiting members who work there, including making some work more than 20 hours a day. Gloria Vale workers have also suffered significant injuries, including lost fingers and chemical burns. SEADRAGON believes it's on track to break even for at least some months of 2022 after recording its lowest loss in 6 years in the year ending March 2021. The Nelson-based marine oil refinery is New Zealand's largest refiner and blender of internationally certified omega-3 oils, but has never made a profit and has chalked up losses totalling about $30 million in the 5 years to 2020. Over the past year, SEADRAGON has been stepping up its shift towards higher value quality refined omega-3 oil production for human and pet food ingredients, moving away from solely supplying sub-component refined tuna oil, which is sold on to other manufacturers who process it into oil blend ingredients. Executive Chair Brian Mogridge said the goal was to reach break-even profit for at least some months in the 2022 calendar year. The TRANS-TASMAN travel bubble has been suspended for at least the next 8 weeks as COVID-19 outbreaks in Australia worsen. While New South Wales is the worst affected state, Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern said there were now multiple outbreaks that have forced 3 states into lockdown. New South Wales has reported a record 136 new cases in the past 24 hours, while Victoria recorded 14 new cases. Under today's announcement, from midnight today, Australians will no longer be able to travel to New Zealand quarantine-free. Those are our top stories as we head into the weekend. The full versions of which, along with all our breaking business news, columns and opinion, are at nbr.co.nz right now. You're watching NBR This Week, a brief look back at the week's top stories from our daily news brief program, NBR Today. On Monday, ASB and the world's largest fund manager, BLACKROCK. ASB has followed AMP in appointing the world's largest fund manager, BLACKROCK, to oversee its investment book. Over 500,000 ASB customers with more than $20 billion invested across its suite of funds, including $13.5 billion in KiwiSaver, will benefit from BLACKROCK's global expertise, the bank said. BLACKROCK will be ASB's chief investment and portfolio manager, encompassing active and index manager research. Adam Boyd, the executive general manager of private banking, wealth and insurance, said it will manage asset allocation and currency decisions across all funds, including the ASB portfolio series. This work had previously been managed in-house with the support of external advisors. It's NBR This Week, the week's top stories from our daily video business news bulletin, NBR Today. From Tuesday, Genesis Energy keeps hands-on its minority stake in the KUPE oil and gas field. Genesis Energy is better off keeping two hands on a minority stake in the KUPE oil and gas field than selling it under recent offers, undervaluing the asset's future production, the PowerCo's chief executive has said. The listed generator retailer on Tuesday said it would continue to own 6% of the KUPE joint venture, with the outcome ending a strategic review announced in November 2020. Chief Executive Mark England would not disclose whether Beach Energy and/or NZOG had made offers, nor would he divulge how many bids Genesis received. This is NBR This Week, the past week's top 5 business stories from NBR Today. I'm Paul Brennan. From Wednesday, the incoming Morrison & Co. Chief Executive. Incoming Morrison & Co. Chief Executive Paul Newfield's appointment was announced this morning, alongside news that incumbent Marko Bodziewski will step down at the end of this year. Remarkably, Newfield will be just the third CEO to lead the firm since it was established in 1988 by the late Lloyd Morrison. Its first creation was infrastructure investment fund Infratil, which listed in 1994 and now has a market capitalisation of $5.4 billion. It's NBR This Week, the top business stories from our daily video news bulletin, NBR Today. From Thursday, fire and general insurers called out by the FMA. A damning Financial Markets Authority report has called out the attitude of fire and general insurers towards conduct and culture, with just 2 of the 42 companies meeting its expectations. And thousands of customers will now receive refunds after being overcharged. Shortcomings identified by the FMA's report released today include a failure of most insurers to actively monitor product suitability, as well as the overcharging of customers and not providing promised multi-policy discounts. Joining the NBR's Hamish McNicol was FMA Director of Banking and Insurance, Claire Bollingford.
So what we haven't seen is systemic misconduct of the nature that we did see in Australia when the Royal Commission reported. But instead what we've seen are weaknesses in controls, which have led to some customers missing out. And what that means in practice is that they haven't received discounts that they were promised, or indeed there is a small number of customers that were overcharged premiums, or may not have products that were suitable for their needs at the time.
FMA Director of Banking and Insurance, Claire Bollingford, with Hamish McNicol. You're watching NBR This Week. Now we're up to Friday's top story. Genesis Energy is staying tight-lipped about the abrupt departure of its star Chief Trading Officer, Sean Goldsberry, a key role in its commercial operations. Goldsberry, a former professional poker player who's worked for Genesis since 2013, also declined to comment on his move. In an NZX announcement yesterday, Genesis said only that Goldsberry, promoted to CTO last September, has left Genesis and has been replaced on an interim basis by Matthew Boswell. A spokesperson declined to comment further. You've been watching our review of the week's top 5 NBR Today stories. You can find the full versions of those stories and more, along with all our daily breaking business news, columns and opinion at nbr.co.nz right now. Saturday, in Fact or Fiction, Brent Edwards and Grant Walker talk China cyber attacks, gangs and climate change. And Neville Gibson's book review on Sunday covers East Germany's spy state. I'm Paul Brennan. Thanks for watching NBR This Week. Have a great weekend, and I look forward to being with you again from Monday on NBR Today.